Anoud, welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
I met you a couple of weeks ago at the Lighthouse, and when I looked, I had heard a lot about you already, and I looked a little bit into your profile and what you do. I was so intrigued, and I want to start there because you seem to straddle a number of things,
Yeah.
seemingly to the outsider, all simultaneously. You have an interest, obviously, in architecture, which is what you've studied. You have an interest in design, broadly speaking, and we'll talk about your tablescapes and your practice there in a minute. You have an interest in, broadly speaking, wellness and fitness and mobility, and you give mobility classes and other things. We're going to talk about that. Is there a common theme that binds all of your interests?
Joy. Yes.
Joy. That's
Joy.
a nice one. Okay.
Yeah. It's seeking joy in moments. So basically, all the things that I love to do.
Did they develop all simultaneously? Because I can relate a little bit to this. I mean, we talked a little bit offline, and I started in banking, and I'm still very interested in finance and trading, and now we have the Lighthouse, and that is more about food and design, and I have my own personal interests in art and culture. So I understand having multiple interests and apply them to your life, which I think is wonderful, honestly. So kudos to you. But in my case, for example, some of them lay dormant, and over time I brought them up, and then eventually I tried to find a way to bind them. But it wasn't all at the same time. How was it for you? I'm curious. Was this a simultaneous eruption, or was it sort of one thing after the other, and then they came together?
No, they were definitely one thing after the other.
Okay.
I've always defined myself as an architect, someone who is rooted in architecture. And then when I became a mom, I geared more towards fitness, taking care of my body and my well-being. And then as my eldest daughter was growing up, I wanted to expose her more to my background, my childhood, which is very much rooted in agriculture. So
Because your family has an agriculture business.
yes.
Okay.
So I wanted to expose her to, the things that I value in life.
And let me just probe here a little bit more as well. On the fitness or on the mobility and movement side, was it just having a child, or was it that at that point you felt, you weren't happy with either your appearance, or you felt you needed to be healthier to deal with being a mother? What was it?
So before I became a mom, working in architecture, I was very much aware of the amount of hours and work that as an architect dedicates in this practice. And I always remember I had a teacher that always used to tell me, you need to be proud and happy because you are always creating for joy for people. Architecture means you are building, you are creating. And working in the office, I always used to remember him saying that. And I, at the same time, remember that as I was creating joy for people, I think my body was paying the price. My body, my social life. So when I became a mom, the priorities were very easy to kind of shift in a way. I had to gear and say...
to slow down.
Yeah, I had to slow down and say, okay, this is the time where I'm going to dedicate time for my body, for my well-being.
Where did you start? What was the starting point?
In fitness?
Yeah.
So I was always fit growing up.
Okay.
But specifically when I got pregnant, I was like, I'm taking a step back. Okay. So back then I quit my desk job and I dedicated fully to just resting in a way. But it wasn't because of it was very intuitive. It was very intuitive. I knew that I was putting so much work and that my body was needed rest. So it was very intuitive. I took a step back.
Were there signs, or was this just your perception? I mean, was there a visible sign? Did you start having aches?
No,
Did you get ill?
My perception.
Your feeling about your consciousness, your own feeling about yourself.
Yeah, I know that I'm a very target-driven person. Okay. So I have I'm very disciplined as well. So I know that when when I've hit a certain intensity of work, that it's time to say, okay, I've reached that target, let me shift a little bit. So that was around that time where I took
That's
a
a
step
pretty
back.
healthy dose of self-awareness. I'm slightly envious.
Yeah.
I never know where to stop, and then
Yeah.
so no, it's hard. It's hard.
I guess so.
It's
but
hard, and that's why I ask for external signs, because sometimes
the
somebody,
signs
yeah,
and-
I mean, the signs are you just fall sick,
Yeah.
or something happens, something erupts.
Yeah.
So for you to by yourself say, you know what, I've gone too far, I have to retool,
Yeah.
is remarkable.
yeah.
And
I guess,
maybe having a child was that sign for you in a way. Forced stressed.
forced stress, maybe as well. But I'm someone who's very intuitive. I journal ever since I was a child. I journal. I'm quite famous with my journals, actually. I have a full library.
Is that right?
Yeah, of
What do you journal in?
everything.
Like, yani, what do you? Oh, really? So you don't have a specific like?
No, so
Binder
yeah,
or-
like I was in college and I was always the one known for this girl and her journal.
Was
For-
it specific?
Yes,
journal.
a black moleskin.
That was my question. Yeah.
Yeah,
Black moleskin.
Black moleskin, the thick sketch.
Oh, I know them. Yeah.
Yeah.
You still use the black moleskin?
Yes.
So if we gift you something that's not a black moleskin, will you just politely take it but then reject
yes.
it? Okay.
Yes.
That's good to know.
Absolutely.
Memo
Not
to
a
self.
red moleskin.
Memo to self.
Yeah,
No gift to
it's-
Anoud of anything but moleskin.
because of the thick paper, it just absorbs all the ink.
Okay.
So a lot of sketches, a lot of everyday life snippets.
And you do it
from-
every day?
I used to almost do it
Okay.
every day. Yeah.
Okay.
Now it's more like once a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remarkable. Do you ever go back and
Yeah.
look at them?
Yeah.
You do?
always, yeah. Because they have really beautiful sketches. Really beautiful sketches. I love them and they're part of my history, my life.
Would you ever share them with anyone?
Actually, a lot of my friends go through them as well.
Oh, really? And you're okay with that?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Most people don't want anyone leafing through their journals.
Actually, the thing is, I'm on social media and I'm very
You are?
active on
Yes.
social media. And I think social media has replaced a little
That
bit
is your
part
way
of
of
my
journaling.
journaling. Yes.
Yeah.
So I sketch, I communicate, I express. I use even social media, my daily stories as to set targets for myself and commit to these targets. So
What
Yeah.
made you shift from a very private journaling process to an extremely public journaling process? That's a big shift.
yeah.
Was it related to the fact that you have a business, obviously, that you needed to promote or showcase? Was it a conscious decision? Did it happen organically?
So before Instagram, there was we were very active. Every designer was very active on Facebook. If you flipped through their profiles, everyone had these dated albums of work.
Correct.
So the shift to Instagram, going visual, was amazing for designers and architects and anyone and artists. So
Was your CV?
yes, exactly. But then
But were you conscious of that shift? Because now it's not just a CV, as you said.
Yes.
Your daily stories, you are effectively journaling in public.
Yes.
But that's a shift, and that's why you just said it yourself. You're not
Yes.
journaling as much
Yes,
by
but-
writing in your
yeah.
moleskin with a thick,
with the thick
thick paper. I'm so envious. I'm going to definitely find something else for her. But anyway.
No, but when I was only a mom, okay, at home in Dubai, a new mother in Dubai, social media was my connection to the world. And I wasn't happy with that. I wasn't happy with that connection. I thought that a lot of the work that was being celebrated is not real. And I think when I became very active, and it started off from a very fitness. It started with me sharing my fitness journey. It was a dedication to everything that was real work, real struggles, every single day. And from there, I started shifting, I think, from sharing the physical exercise every day to sharing more the emotional, to how I perceive the world, to finding design in fitness, finding what is it about fitness that I love. Is it the movement? Is it the flow? Connecting to that. Then it started, my journal changed from being a fitness journey to finding beauty and the essence of movement.
And connecting dots in your interest. I saw that.
Yes.
So as you said now, I was smiling because when you said design in fitness, I mean, that's one of the areas of interest to you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get into the agriculture and design piece as well that shows up in your tablescapes, obviously.
Yes.
But you're connecting dots slowly.
I understood what I love about design by practicing fitness.
Movement.
I tried all sorts of modalities, all sorts of types of fitness, and I understood that continuous flow is what I love. Then I started seeing that connection in space, how I design spaces, how that movement, that energy, that connection.
You know, that's so interesting. I want to share a story, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
One of my great uncle is an Egyptian artist called Mahmoud Said, well-known artist. And there was one of his paintings of men praying.
Yeah.
And you see they're arched. Obviously, their backs are arched. So there's this curvature. And, as you all know, in a lot of Islamic countries, a lot of the doors, there's a lot of arches in general.
Yes.
Right? So I started realizing that he took the design, the architectural design of a lot of these homes and mosques and, public spaces and weaved it into the movement of those people by creating a harmony in a way.
Yeah.
And it sort of almost feels like,
yes.
what you're talking about is sort of similar there. There's a connecting dot between the architectural artifact and then the movement.
Yeah.
And then your practice, essentially.
It is understanding the environment around us, for sure.
And you seem very intuitive when it comes to understanding the environment around you. So one of the things I picked up when I was doing research for this episode is how much you contemplate and study. I'm talking now specifically about your tablescapes and that the work you do in that arena, which is fascinating. So you have this process, somewhat rigid process, if I understand it, of a number of days of essentially studying, building up, until you produce that tablescape.
Yes.
Obviously in conversation with your client or your friend or whoever.
Yes. So the process begins with maybe a conversation with the brand or the client that is approaching me. And I walk in as an architect and as a designer, trying to understand, and this is the designer in me, trying to understand what form of beauty does this brand or this client or this human seek. I try to understand, where is it coming from? Is there a certain exposure through their childhood, the way they see the world? Is there, again, that comes also from the fitness instructor. You need to connect. To understand how the person moves. So many people describe their design and what they love about design by purely saying, I love the lightness of something. So they're trying to explain that. And this is what I like to capture. From there, I try to bring that in as a beginning of the story. The first sentences of those stories. How can I build onto that visual language and that emotion in a way and it could be a tablescape, it could be an installation, it could be design, interior, space. How does it capture on the beauty that you appreciate? That's how it begins.
It's fascinating. It's also very versatile. In a span of 2 weeks, I saw you at a common friend's house, at Nada's place, and then at the Lighthouse during the pop-up, and they were completely different installations, both by you, but very differently inspired, very different concepts.
Yes.
So there's a lot of versatility in the work, which is unusual.
And I think that comes from the fact that I love design, and I appreciate all forms and types of design. There's no one style. I see my work as kind of a tool if I'm smart enough to understand you, then I can provide you with a service that kind of builds on your work and your design.
Does that make it easier to work with repeat clients? In other words, if Hashem asked you to come and work with me on something,
Yeah.
the first time, perhaps you'll know me so well, is that kind of a level of intimacy with your clients? Does that change
Yes.
your process, make it easier over time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But the information doesn't only come from a conversation between me and you. I walk into your space and I automatically understand who you are. There's this...
Now we're very curious. We want to know when you walked into the Lighthouse, what did you think that it's just me? Now I'm so curious.
Yeah, you walk in with the strangers, with a fresh...
صح.
And that's something I always tell my clients when they're trying to recreate their interiors. You need to walk in having the eyes of a stranger. Who are you? What do you perceive? Yes. To see things as they are, without any emotional attachments, without the routine, without anything. How does this space look like? What does it say about the person that is living and working in this space? So this kind of information comes in from all sorts of places, from something you said, from if I know you well, your space, your designs, all of that comes in, and it's almost like you're trying to, collect information, and then there needs to be a target. And usually the target is, a lot of it has to do with exploring, trusting the process, creating something new, and at the same time, creating I'm talking now about tablescapes.
Yes.
A wow factor element. You need to shock. I like to shock people.
Do you need to shock?
Yes. But in a very
Do you want to shock, or do your clients need shock, or is it a factor also of social media today and needing something that's more clickable?
I think most of the work that's been celebrated
has that factor.
No, I mean the work that we are always seeing in general is mediocre.
Okay.
Right?
Big statement.
Yeah. Sorry. You pushed me to it.
No, but I want to push you. That's the whole point.
I want, before people, I want myself to...
You want to rise above the fray. I get it.
Yes.
But I'm asking, does it need to be a shock factor? Is that an essential element?
When you're in nature, you're not thinking about anything. You're experiencing that moment, that honest moment, and this very mindful moment. I want that to happen when you're perceiving my work.
I see.
It's not about shocking as in, I want to shock you. No, I want you to be thrilled. I want you to be excited. I want you to absorb my work and really be present when you see my work. Not because I want you to acknowledge me, but I want you to show how beautiful things can be. That nature is very beautiful, that design is very beautiful, art is very beautiful when the product is also executed in a high quality, well thought of.
Well, the work you're doing is definitely inviting presence, right?
Yeah.
Because I have to take a moment, we're talking about specifically installations and tablescapes,
Yeah.
to look at what you've done. And essentially, that creates certain stillness and a certain space for me to one way or the other interact with what you've put together. How did this come about? Was your first tablescape a personal attempt? Did someone prompt you by asking you to come work with them on something? Because there seems to be a very organic process here, but it must have started somewhere. And you're an architect, so obviously you have the building blocks.
Yeah.
But it's not obvious that every architect goes and decides to work with installations and tablescapes and those types of things.
Okay.
They may have the eye, they may have the training on the process. It doesn't always transition very successfully, I have to be honest.
So, my process started from when I was a child.
Okay.
Again, I come from an agriculture background. So usually in summer, when it's the season, farmers used to always, we used to always host and have these fruits tables, produce tables. And as a young child, I was given the task to lay out the fruits and vegetables and kind of celebrate them, showcase them, be proud of them. And as a child, I wanted always to celebrate our produce.
And your heritage.
And my heritage.
So I was going to say, because you just said we, that's why I smiled.
Yeah.
It's how interesting how you see yourself very much
because it's
tied
teamwork.
to this heritage.
Because it's teamwork, agriculture.
Yeah.
Seasonality.
Does it have to do also with the heritage you shared with me earlier, that on the Bedouin heritage on your father's side? Is that part of the identity, being tied to land, being tied to, does that come in?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, that's a big conversation.
It is.
But it's always giving back.
And it's connecting to land as well.
Yes.
There's that.
Yeah. I mean, Jordan
anchor.
I grew up hearing that Jordan is not a rich country. We don't have water. We don't have so much. We don't have a lot. Okay. We have hard work. If you work hard, you can rise. Mm. So, and I come from a tribe that dedicated for years and years back to the land, and not only agriculture, government, and all of that. So I come from that line, and I always thought that what I will do is I will give back. So, I mean, as a child, I always used to hear these things. So these tables were a sense of pride
100%.
for, the work, my dad. It's also, they were colorful, beautiful.
Yeah, I was going to say,
projects.
Celebrating beauty in many ways.
Yeah. So growing up, I was given that task of laying out these, هو معلم التصفيط يعني.
Okay,
Of the
oranges and lemons and whatever comes from the land.
Exactly. So, and because, again, back to my Bedouin part, we used to host a lot, almost like once a week, twice a week. And it almost like was a training for years.
Yeah.
If
setting
my
the table,
guests,
doing this.
If my guests come close to these fruits, the more interesting they looked, that means I'm doing a great job. And it was like building blocks again. So fast forward during COVID, I think everyone experienced that lockdown, being away from nature, and we all intuitively reached out to nature.
صح.
In
as a
different
resource.
ways. Yeah. I cannot forget when we first went to the supermarket, me and my husband, and he's going to kill me for this, but it's okay.
It's perfectly fine.
He was reaching out to all the canned stuff, trying to,
He might kill you for this.
Yes.
We won't edit this out.
Yeah. And I looked at him and I'm like, this is definitely my nightmare. No way. I'll go hungry and I won't eat this. So I was buying all the fresh stuff. And I guess this is one of I always remember this because later I understood that moment. My appreciation to agriculture and green, because in COVID, that's when it boomed. I always understood that we come from that background, but I never understood that it's so much in me that I need to celebrate it. It's
integral to your identity.
Yeah.
And to who you are, your beliefs as well. It's very obvious. I mean, obvious today, maybe.
Yeah. And then during COVID, I remember me and a couple of my friends, we were 5. After things started loosening up in terms of socializing and going from house to house, going out, I mean, we started organizing these get-togethers, this small supper club, and they're all great cooks. So, so when it was my turn, my way of celebrating them was creating these tablescapes, and it was a natural connection to nature. The stuff I did in COVID for me and my friends, pure dedication and connection to my home in Jordan and into nature as well, in general. So it was like a weekly table of pure exploration, but not simple. Like I would, it's a little bit weird and it's going to sound weird, but like I'd miss my grandma. She passed away after a couple of years, but she's a big part of my upbringing. So I miss her, and
you'd react to this.
I'd react to that, and it would end up with a fully pressed flower table with resin on top, and it
Amazing.
Like execution,
100%. This is your way of celebrating her life.
Yeah, so it wasn't like a small thing, and then I think that picked up. The second things started opening up after COVID, I had a lot of requests. People...
And it became a business.
And it became
Literally.
a business, and I'm like,
amazing.
Guys, I work on interiors. Like, I do other things.
Everybody wants your tablescape. No, you became like
Yes.
a sensation of some sorts. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. I mean, so many people talked about it. Yeah. And it was so sought after and still, which is amazing, but it happened so organically.
Yes.
This was not a forced process.
Yes, no.
Which is amazing. And it's also amazing that you were able to capture in a way where it's still true to yourself, yet bring joy to others as well, because people enjoy them and they see them and so on and so forth. Yeah. Do you have a preference for public events versus private events, in the sense that private events tend to be seen by fewer people? I'm using this as an analogy to something that I think about quite a bit, and I think maybe I alluded to you about this when we looked at a program to promote artists at the Lighthouse. Mm-hmm. One of my main points where there were so many amazing Arab artists that are only seen in closed spaces, whether homes or more museums and galleries, and those can be intimidating. And we wanted to shorten that distance by putting them at the Lighthouse, which is more of a public space and a restaurant space and so on and so forth. And a lot of artists reacted really well to this. They were like, we're so happy you're doing this, because this does not belittle the art, but it elevates it. And it gives it exposure of a different type. Is that something you think about? Because you do a bit of both. You do private events, you do public events.
I mean, the thing is that every project requires different roles from me. So in private events, I take on the interior designer, the product, I create products, design, execute. It's not only the table. I walk in as an interior designer, so we can transform, we can create entire spaces, installations, and there's so much exploration from table all the way to lighting. That's private. When it's public, I think because of the nature right now, because I'm now starting to take on bigger events,
projects and more public projects.
Yes, I think people still don't understand that I can do the full spectrum. So far now, I'm limiting myself, they're limiting me.
Here's your space.
Here's my space. Yeah, this is the decorative element of the table that you will be designing. The plates are from here. I don't know what's from here. And then I look at the plate and it's like, what is this? But then
I can relate to this.
Yeah, but then it's the floral. But it's all very exciting because I can intensify my work in different ways. But do I have a preference? I don't think I do. I really value when my client understands my designs and really appreciates my designs. So that's what I look for. I look for that joy, for that connection. Did you understand me? Yes, I understood you. We have that connection. Yes, that's the beauty. That's where I feel rewarded.
Is there a joy or a frustration with the fact that these installations and tablescapes are ephemeral and temporary? For someone that comes from an architectural background, where you're used to developing things that are very much not temporary, they're very much, about permanent. There's a permanence.
Yeah.
And I love this concept, by the way, because you're playing with it in many ways. And I have a fascination with ephemeral temporary things, because
Yeah.
I find it fascinating that one would put that kind of effort into something that will vanish in a week. But you've come from the opposite background in that sense.
Yeah.
How do you interact with that?
I see it from different ways. I love energy and movement, and I don't like when things take so long, because I want you to experience them right now, and in its intensity, and it's in season. So temporary installations give me that satisfaction, and also, and that's, I guess, maybe the appreciation of movement and energy and that change. But then, when I experience the opposite when I'm about to leave the installation or my table, I usually...
It's going to be gone in a day.
Yeah, I sit there and I look at it and I almost like say goodbye.
Do you document and archive?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
So there is a way of holding on to that work.
But because you study a lot and you put yourself in a position where you are one with the work for so much that when you say goodbye, it's like you're really saying goodbye to a friend, to a piece of work, to a piece of art, and saying, okay, letting go.
Here's my pop psychology moment. You started with journals that are very permanent, that are in writing.
Yeah.
And then you move to social media, which is not permanent. It is in some ways, but digital and ephemeral, especially stories and so on and so forth. Yeah. And you're an architect working on permanent structures, moving on to now So that's very interesting, and you seem very comfortable with that journey.
Yeah.
Because it's two very different things.
Now I'm realizing.
Yeah. But that's why I asked, are you archiving this, which is interesting. So you're really bringing it back almost 360 degrees, right? You're starting here, but so the journaling and archiving element, to me, that's why I asked about it. It's very interesting. But it's also very interesting because you are rooted, and you spoke about this, your roots in Jordan, your roots to your culture and background, yet you seem very comfortable with change and fluidity. Most people that are this rooted, they need this anchor. And change does not necessarily correspond to anchoring something.
I think, when it comes to architecture, the process sometimes never ends. You work for a full year on a project, and then
it frustrates you.
It frustrates you, and then it dies. And sometimes the project doesn't done. It's over.
This is exactly the opposite. What you're doing now.
This is
beginning and end.
A beginning and end, and you see it, you experience it, and you see others celebrating it. I think that's when it comes to architecture versus maybe temporary installation.
But also a little bit of both, right? So you look at, for example, artists and photographers. We were talking about Hazem Harb, which is the piece that's released in Lighthouse. He takes archival images and appropriates them and manipulates them.
Yeah.
And in some ways, you're doing something similar because you're taking parts of your heritage, whether it's food, design elements, and so on. You're appropriating them, you're manipulating them, changing them, and making them look like something else.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. It's a little bit of both because there is that fixed part, and there's the ephemeral part.
Yeah.
And it's maybe your way of interacting with it. I don't know. I'm going to stop my pop psychology, but it's very interesting to me.
I never thought of it that way, honestly. But I think I like to feel and sense the energy and movement in space. Even if I've worked on something. Like, for example, I'll give you a simple example. It's my parents' house. It was my baby. I worked on it from A to Z. Now when I look at it, I don't see it as a building, something that I've built. I look at it as, what are the shadows? I see the shadows. I see the greenery that changes every year. Whenever I go and visit them, I see, this tree has grown. Now it's shading on this side. I love the movement around this fixated element. I love that more so than the permanent.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. I hear you. It's interesting. What do your girls think about what you do?
My girls. Oh, God. My girls, I mean, I really don't know, but
Do you talk to them about it? Do you get your opinion on particular installations or some of your work, or no?
yeah, well, I mean, my eldest experienced the first design.
How
design
old is your eldest?
8.
The other one is 3, so she's a bit young.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my youngest experienced COVID with me.
So she was at home with you and saw.
Yeah, so my youngest continuously collects stones
Oh, interesting.
and flowers.
She's a mini Anoud.
It's insane. It's hilarious. And both of them randomly, as they're walking, they stop and stretch. Or they, like do all sorts of movement. And
You randomly stopped and stretched just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, but and sometimes I look at them and I'm like, we're in a public space. Like, just sit down. There's no need to, down dog, yoga, I don't know.
I wonder where they got it from.
Yeah. But they're very comfortable with, my eldest is very comfortable with redecorating all the time.
Her own room. Or
Room,
everything.
The house, and I'm like, slow down. This we need. But she's part of that conversation. But I thought that this was normal. I mean, we did this growing up. Do you remember your mom moving things around all the time?
Most definitely, I do.
Yeah. So I think they're creative. They are creative in their own way.
Has your success in your practice, be it your mobility practice, your design practice, helped you see Dubai as a home? Has it anchored you here? Because we spoke offline about you growing up in Jordan, moving to Lebanon for almost 10 years, working there, and then coming here, and there was a certain level of resentment maybe in the early stages, which is normal when one moves.
Yes.
Has this now helped you reconcile and feel more at home?
Absolutely. When I first moved to Dubai, I saw it from a
2010, correct?
Yeah, from a tourist point of view. Again, the architecture school that I went to, I think, was a bit of a socialist, had the socialist view on architecture.
At AOB?
Yeah. So coming here was like accepting the fast-paced life and city.
No. And a more commercial, visibly commercial way, right?
Yes.
In some ways, at least compared to certainly AOB and Beirut.
Yes, but I went on for I'd say years trying to understand the city, why it developed in that way. Why is this highway here? Why are those banners covering things behind and not in other places? What's happening? But it was until I became a mom in Dubai and I picked up on fitness that I started to connect with people that had similar interests when it came to fitness. Then during COVID, I would say. COVID is the time where I connected to people from here, to Emiratis and non-Emiratis who were born here. And that changed my perception of Dubai and this place. Because I started relating to the space as my home, and I started to explore home. So now I'm on a mission.
That's so interesting. You were no longer looking at it from, as you said, a tourist perspective or an outsider's perspective. That takes time. I feel the same way.
Yes.
I wasn't as critical. I had enjoyed Dubai from the beginning for different reasons. But I do appreciate that making it your own takes time. And also obviously meeting Emiratis and people that grew up here creates a bit of, again, anchor.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at my home 10 years ago, it was a collection of my
past life.
Yes, my grandma's cabinets and I've brought in everything to kind of anchor me and ground me. Now it's completely different.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I can relate to that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But home means that I need to know every single alley and rock and plant, and I need to understand everything now. That's where my mission. And now I'm on a mission to really understand what is there to explore in terms of craftsmanship, in terms of traditions, culture, what it means to what does the heritage here, what does the culture here mean?
Yeah.
I need to understand that juxtaposed with.
Well, what's so
all
interesting
this
here is and I differentiate between the heritage and culture. I think what you're doing is making culture. In some ways, I think what we're doing, all of us collectively, is weaving the fabric of Dubai's culture. You use the heritage as a base, as a jumping point. But because we're not from here, I think we're reinterpreting it in our eyes, in our ways. And I find that fascinating. That's a very, very interesting way of living. Because growing up in Egypt, or for you growing up in Jordan, you can't do that. People are rooted there, they grew up there, they stay there, they die there. They may have an ability to reinterpret certain elements, but it's very much much more of a homogeneous society with sharing similar roots. We don't have that here. You know, we have, of course, certain shared traits. But generally speaking, we come in from different angles, but build something together. I find that very interesting. And Dubai really gives you that platform. It really does.
Yes. I mean, Dubai now to me is I can't create the same way in my hometown. There isn't a market for it.
Yeah.
So
that's an interesting point. Yeah, there isn't a market for it.
There isn't a market for it. So, and I need to acknowledge that. All my life, I dreamt I'm going to go back to Jordan and have an office and give back. But it's not the case right now. So I see my role, and my role has changed completely. I define myself in a different way. But Dubai definitely provides the market. That melting point of so many cultures. What fascinates me that every nationality has a supermarket.
Yeah.
This alone is
I don't know if there's Egyptian supermarkets, but anyway, I will investigate.
But isn't it amazing?
It is. It is.
It's like you're peeking into all sorts of cultures, nationalities, and it's amazing. But on a personal level, as a Bedouin, I'm relating a lot to the culture here. There are certain things that I did not know that I have in common with the local, I would say, not only Emiratis, like in general, this region, the Gulf.
Yeah, of course.
I mean,
there's connecting tissue for sure, even historically.
Yes.
We talked about it earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I love sitting on the floor. Simple as that. A lot of my clients, and that's something, maybe it's a simple thing, but because my mom she's Jordanian, but comes from the city. My dad is Bedouin. So she used to always tell my dad, why are you sitting on the floor? We have couches, what are you? But my dad's like,
that's his
Bedouin.
comfort zone.
This is I'm grounded. So 2 years ago, I had a client in Abu Dhabi, and she opened my perspective, and meeting her was such an honor, and because we connected on all sorts of levels, from sitting on the floor to connection to design, to the quality of the she opened my eyes. And ever since I met that woman, I want to explore. Absolutely.
Let me go back to this element, because it's obviously very important to you, of giving back. So you mentioned this very clearly as part of your heritage, your Bedouin heritage, growing up, how your family, your dad perceived things. How do you plan to do that? Because to your point now, this is your new home, in a different world. If you are about to go back to Jordan, that's an easy way to do it. But you're not doing this right now.
No.
So how do you feel about giving back? In what capacity do you feel? Because I think it's important to you. You would be eventually able to do that. Okay. In what form?
I think we are so lucky to be in a place where things are happening, where we are given a voice to explore and create and produce. And that's not where I come from. We are, always importing culture from abroad, production from abroad. What's beautiful about Dubai here, that we are creating this narrative, we are creating this story. And I want to be part of that story, of creating and being part of the story of the UAE. Things are moving, and this energy is moving, and I think that we're lucky to be part of that.
I think so too. And it's an interesting moment in time, because I think Dubai as well has moved away from an importing mindset, which was very much there, and probably, as you said, in most of the Arab world, unfortunately, even though we have so much talent within our ranks, to now realizing that there's something very interesting about trying to utilize the people that live here and that made this their home to grow something. And that is very new. That is very new because there's no blueprint for it in the Arab world, really, when you think about it. So hatta when people talk about going back to our roots, they're saying, okay, maybe Egypt had artisans 10, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Let's go back to that. But that's not what we're doing here.
Yeah.
You are creating something fresh.
Yeah.
But it takes in all these elements from various Arab countries and non-Arab countries as well. So I agree with you. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Fantastic. Anoud, thank you. That was eye-opening, to say the least.
Thank you.
And I look forward to joining one of your mobility classes. I'm so curious.
Anytime.
Become more flexible.
Thank
you very
for
much.
Having me.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you,
good?
guys.